The art of living well and the art of dying well are one. Epicurus. Hello and welcome back, Full Metal family, to another episode of the Full Metal Cast. I am your host, Moores Walker, and as always, thank you for spending your valuable time on this earth consuming the content I create. Shouldn't take up too much time this week. Don't want to go into a dark and doomy and gloomy sort of monologue this time around. I do apologize for missing last week's episode. We had football home openers. We got actually to a cider mill here in the Midwest as the fall season is now upon us, unfortunately. I'm a bit of a summer body. Um, that seasonal depression is starting to look more like full-time depression. Am I right, fellas? Um, but yeah, so sorry for missing the episode last week. I'm going to be out of town this weekend, so I am filming this ahead of time so I can have it published and up for Sunday so I don't miss another one. I cannot do any more injustices to you people, all tens of you. Thank you. Actually, I say that, but I have had a bit of an influx in humidor orders lately, as you can see behind me there. Uh, it's actually a great time to buy them. The cold weather is coming upon us, and if you live in a state such as mine, where the cold weather sticks around for quite a bit, and actually the temperature can still fluctuate greatly as the weather gets colder. So you can still have 80-degree days, and you can have 60 degrees days, or 50-degree days, or even lower. The humidity level within your humidor may start to suffer if it's a traditional one that isn't sealed like a full metal humidor. So those buying might be getting ahead of the curve. With that being said, though, enough shilling of le product. Let's see. This last weekend, actually, part of the reason why I was off also doing football, I made it out to my local DNR range. And actually, the one I went to is, not super local. It took me quite a while to get there from where I live, but I wanted to practice my holds at various distances with the zero that I have on my rifle. So I got it dialed into 100 yards. It was roughly 100 with the rifle I took in particular. It's sort of my flat range, sort of beat up rifle. It's the one I rattled can. It's the one I spray painted. And while on the flat range, I may have had it roughly 0 to, 25 or so yards. And when you're shooting out there at trash, and while you're moving around, even you're not shooting at very long distances. And so ahead of this class I'm coming to in the first week of October, I really wanted to get used to holds and practicing my holds and becoming really familiar with the implications of my zero on the rifle. Now it is a 16-inch 5.56 with a 1-to-6 LPVO. So a 100-yard meter seemed like the zero that would be most suited for that rifle. Now I have other rifles, other AR pistols and whatnot, as well as SBRs that can, that with shorter barrels that I am looking at, getting dialed in and becoming more proficient with at shorter ranges with shorter range zeros. But this one I locked into 100. And if this is something you haven't done, if you are not familiar with what having a 100 or a 50-yard zero hold means, and then shooting that rifle at various distances, either longer or shorter than the distance you zeroed it on, I highly recommend you get out and get familiar with that because, boy, the first, I only buy a 10-round magazine, so I wasn't like burning through, ammo here, only loading it up like 5 shots at a time. Oh boy, the first 5 rounds or so, I was completely lost, and I sort of had to realize, oh shit, yeah, I'm not holding it. I'm shooting like 50 yards. I had it zeroed, at 100 yards. I'm not changing the hold at all. I'm aiming right at the middle of the target and going, what the fuck is happening here? So it took a while for my brain to sort of transition, even though I was fully aware of what I was at the range trying to do at the time. But all I'm trying to say here is if you haven't done that, if you haven't really practiced your holds or are really familiar with the implications your zero has on your rifle at varying distances, please do so because you'll end up like me and hopefully you're not in a real world or a high stakes scenario in which you feel lost and are wondering why your shots are either super low or super high. That being said, though, I've always kind of talked shit on ranges, whether they be state owned or indoor, with super strict RSOs. This range did have like a 1 second between each shot rule. I know I mentioned I only loaded my 10-round magazine up with 5 rounds at a time, but I'm pretty sure 5 rounds was their rule as well. They had a limit. Super strict rules about stepping over the line and whatnot and other things. But I had a fairly good experience. And I feel like I'm kind of overdue to share a good experience with something like this, especially if it's something that the state owns, given how much we shit on the state here, rightfully so. But anyways, it was a very good time. Actually, the one of the range security officers there, a gentleman with sort of a red hair, red beard, was very helpful. Checking in on me, see if I needed any help. Shared some tips that he had. One of the scope rings came loose that I was working with. I brought my 308 rifle as well that I was shooting at 100 yards too for fun. One of the scope rings came loose. We were talking about that, what rings I use, what rings he uses, you know, getting the torques back just in the field without, real intricate tools, only using like an Allen key. Really helpful guy, really nice guy. At the same time, though, there was an older gentleman with a carry handle, AR, just shooting irons at 50 yards. Um, he was pressing his own ammo. I think he was shooting like, represses, and he had the primers they were not flush with the brass at all. None of them were working, excuse me. He was having the hardest time. The RSO was talking to him. They're going back and forth. The RSO was explaining why they weren't working because the primers weren't pressed all the way. And then this guy, as you can imagine, had all of the boomer FUD gun takes, how the AR is a terrible weapon, for home defense. You want to use, like number 6 bird shot for home defense and whatnot. A 357 is way too much handgun. You're gonna, you're gonna hurt your wrist after shooting that for too much. Use like a 9mm, like a 38 or something. Just absolutely hilarious. The meme takes you always hear. And thank God I didn't have my electronic ear pro on me. I actually left it at home. I had just a spare throwaway cheapo pair I had to buy at a range one day. So they just sit in my car. I had those on, so I only really hear half of the things he was saying. So it's just sort of a lot of, yeah, totally, got it. Sharing with me his wild gun broker finds and how buying ammo online is such a scam because you got to pay, shipping and all this stuff. And it was hilarious just to sort of see the manifestation of a lot of memes in person right next to me. There's also a gentleman who probably should have hit the gym. That's all I'll say about that. But at the same time, in the stall next to him was another gentleman who looked like he served, judging by the patches that he had on his bag, the type of bag, and just the way he dressed and carried himself, shooting a 22 and practicing for competition. And that was fascinating just to watch. If I had to move from the 50-yard stall to like the 100-yard stall, I'd have to wait until, the range officer called everyone, guns down, and you can move targets and rearrange things. So I had wrapped up and was ready to move to the 100, and I just watched him as he was zeroing in his 22 rifle on the 50-yard sort of stall, and the targets he was using, and just how he was talking to his spotter and how they were going back and forth about, different techniques with each shot, different adjustments he would have to make. That was very, very cool to watch. So I just want to sort of call that out. Don't be afraid to go out to the DNR ranges if you have to. I think they're excellent just to help sort of zeroing, strictly just for zeroing. You're not you. It's tough the way they're set up. I took a picture and posted it on the Instagram. It's kind of hard to see, but the windows and the way the stalls are constructed, it's very hard to really run many drills. You may be able to, practice on like getting the gun from like sort of like up ready to up, if you will, or maybe it's not, you can't really go low ready because you got to keep it pointed down the stall at all times, but you may be able to keep it pointed down range, not looking down the sight, bring it up and get a sight picture. You might be able to run really those sort of drills. Same with the handgun stalls as well, but it's very, very restricted in what you can do. But from a zeroing perspective, that's probably, the most use you can get out of them. But go right ahead. It's very cheap. There's only like $6 to use the range. Depending on your state, you may need like a rec pass on your vehicle. There wasn't anyone checking, no, thankfully this time, so I didn't need that. I just kind of drove right in and just paid to use the range. But yeah, don't be afraid to get on those, get familiar with your zeros, and play around a little bit. And hey, you may even meet some people too, so don't be afraid to wear your spicy sort of, gun culture clothing. And actually, I gotta take this off because I am starting to sweat like a motherfucker here. Please hold. It's fall season here, and so the Americana Pipe Dream Swiss surplus camo, the Alpenflage or whatever you call it, I think it's described as like the pumpkin spice of the camo world, just because of how folly it is, and it really looks more like a Supreme pizza, in my opinion. I think it is also called pizza camo too, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, yeah, love this thing. Love wearing it on the bike. I think in this time of year, but I'm sweating. I have to turn off my AC because it's just so loud in my apartment that whenever I'm recording, um, I just turn it off and have to sweat it out. Also, the mask doesn't help either, nor does the headphones or the hat. But also, speaking of spicy gun culture shirts, this is obviously a joke. Obviously a joke, especially with the RFK news or the thwarted assassination attempt, allegedly, which the irony never ceases in this country. This is from Anti-State, though, no affiliation with them or Americana Pipe Dream, just like the clothes. Um, I guess speaking of irony, actually, this just came across my desk while I was just sort of reading some of the news in my 9 to 5 today. What was the company's name? Big Tobacco entity. Oh, Philip Morris. Apparently, they're playing around in like the pharma space, or they were planning an entry into the pharmaceutical or medical sort of industry. I didn't read too much of the article or really get into the weeds of it, but the critics of it, I'm just gonna pull up the article here. I sent it to myself. It was just too funny when I was reading it. It was easily the most ironic thing I've read all week. Um, There you go. Tobacco giant Philip Morris is reconsidering its recent foray into healthcare and mulling the sale of a stake in its biggest pharmaceutical unit, Ventura Group. Ventura is one of three pharmaceutical companies acquired by Philip Morris in 2021 for over $2 billion combined. All make inhalers and other treatments for smoking related respiratory diseases. But almost immediately, the deal faced opposition, with critics arguing that it creates perverse incentives for PM to increase harm through smoking, so they might then profit again through treating smoking related diseases. So essentially, Philip Morris said, like, sort of the quiet part out loud. If you're someone who sort of believes that big pharma and the medical industrial complex in this country is designed to keep people sick because that's how shareholders and that's how they make money. Philip Morris went about it in a little more blatant way if you are against their push into this field. But I don't know. I say go for it. I think if you're going to let everyone else do it, why not let them do it? They have not been allowed to have any sort of funding. They're not allowed to advertise with their big tobacco, and they're highly restricted. But they are just simply drug dealers and cartels, no different than all the other pharmaceutical companies. They just haven't been given lab coats and name tags and other things that allow them into government buildings. So I thought that was pretty funny. I had to share that. Another thing, and I'm trying to think about which order I want to go about this, but I think I wanted to share my experience recently in the 9 to 5 again, doing my job, where I was put into a position where the stakes were very high, dealing with a lot of money, very big decisions, relationships, and what's the word I'm looking for? It's after work brain right now. I'm sorry. Um, relationships and reputations, sorry, were at stake. I was basically told to facilitate a little bit of a back and forth between ourselves and several investors where we were thinking about selling some assets to one of these investors. So I was basically facilitating the auction, getting bids, trying to get one and the other investor to bid more than the other to see, try to get the best price for the assets we were looking to sell. However, I was not in a position in which I was granted any authority. I was not in the decision making position, simply a facilitator, but I was the face of this entire transaction, which I was fine with. I lack the experience, I will acknowledge, and the experience and the knowledge, for lack of a better word, to really be in a position to make decisions. However, the individuals, and there are more than one, that were required to pull the trigger and make decisions, who had that level of authority, were not available throughout the entire day. And these are auctions and these are processes in the industry that have to move very quickly. They always move very quickly. And essentially, what should have taken less than an hour took almost 3 hours, over 3 hours actually. Um, and that's because no one was available. Nobody can jump on the phone. I couldn't walk by somebody's desk. I couldn't chat them. I couldn't email them. I could not get anything out of any of them. So much so till, and thankfully, the investors, the people who we are partnered with, were very understanding, and we were able to still get the thing done. But I remember in the moment scrambling, trying, and someone who was watching me trying to rip my phone out of my desk and throw it through the window, which was in front of me, said, "It looks like you're trying to herd cats right now." And I told him, "No, it's more like I was given a dog whistle and told to organize fucking goldfish with it. It was so much worse than herding cats, I think." Um, but long story short, we got it done. We got this sort of deal on the books. We got it finalized. We got it confirmed. It is moving forward. Ended up making the company a lot of money because of it. However, it was important for me in that moment to sort of step back and say, "Listen, I do not have the authority. I can explain that to these people as much as possible, trying to be as friendly, as accommodable, and as professional as possible. But I need to understand that what's out of my control is exactly that. It's out of my control, and I cannot stress it. I cannot let it determine my mood, excuse me, or my performance. I can simply control what is in sort of my sphere, and that's about it." And so at a certain point in the day, when I was really trying to put a nice bow on this thing, but I really couldn't because I didn't have the power vested in me or the individuals around me who had said power, I just said, "I'm dropping it. I am already staying way too late. I'm about to miss the gym. I've done everything I can do. We are in a good position. I've spoken to the investor who basically won the auction. We're going to tie out first thing tomorrow morning. I'm leaving it. Goodbye." And that was it. And I came in, and guess what? It was all there for me today. I had no issues because of it and the way I left it. So I wanted to put that out there. I think a lot of us, everyone's getting burnt out, anyways, especially after what happened the past 3, 4 years here. Um, but I still do think people are putting a tremendous amount of weight on themselves to perform and maybe even overperform in their 9 to 5s and in their jobs. And if your job isn't something that really betters you and your family and the world around you outside of just putting money into your pocket or other sort of incentives, you are just going to waste your time and your life. And this is just my take because I'm suffering, or I have suffered from that. I graduated college, went right into, the corporate world, and I worked my ass off, would work 10, hour days on a short staffed team where I was underpaid, all because I was going to climb the ladder. I was going to lead that team. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I did all that and I got fucked. I worked for the largest company in America at the time who did the certain thing that we were working in. I was able to lead a team in a very elite part of that company. Um, I got fucked by bureaucracy and red tape and by nepotism. I reported to people who basically got their job through knowing other people or were following orders who got their job because of someone else who knew someone else, or it wasn't everything that it sort of shaped up to be. And fast forward, that was years and years ago. Fast forward to where I am now, where I have never been more happy, more confident with where I am in my life and the trajectory that I'm at and my understanding of the world and my purpose in it. I never would have done that. I never would have broken my ass or busted my ass to impress nobodies. Nobodies who basically have made their entire personality, their entire lives about the desk that they sat behind, this huge corporate machine that did nothing to better themselves, their families, the worlds around them, or do anything good for the world. And I'm not saying that you have to do that, but me personally, that's really that's where I'm not aligned now. And I find out that where I'm aligned now, it brings me the most joy, the most purpose in this life, the most enjoyment in this life. So obviously I wouldn't have done that. That is obviously, after the fact. So neither here nor there. You have to learn, you have to fail, you have to fall down and get back up to really understand what the right direction is to go in life. But I wanted to sort of share that little experience because I saw myself slipping back into my old ways and realized very quickly, wow, this sucks. Um, who fucking cares? This doesn't matter. I'm not going to lose my job over this. I'm surely not going to get promoted if I stay late and do nothing either. So fuck it. Let's go to the gym. I'll tell you right now, I felt a whole lot better after going to the gym than I did coming in, excuse me, first thing this morning and wrapping this stupid thing up. So keep that in mind next time you feel yourself, maybe getting sucked into something in life that isn't really, driving towards your goals. It's not really contributing towards a happier, healthy lifestyle. Don't be afraid to put it down and walk away, so long as it is safe and responsible to do so. Like I said, I wasn't going to lose my job over this. No one was going to die or get hurt over this. No one was going to lose any money over this either. So, going to throw that out there. But speaking of nepotism, bureaucracy, and uselessness and things outside of our control, there have been sort of some observations to go over, I think, in the realm of the gun control sort of debates that have been happening, and there have been two very key states to follow. Tennessee, obviously, I've mentioned the special session that was called, which TRX Arms has done an incredible job at following and keeping the public and those interested, rather, really in the loop of what's really happening and how things really work. And on the other side of the coin, you have Arizona, or New Mexico, sorry. New Mexico. Sorry, Arizona folks. Which was just blatant. There was no need for a special session there. It was just outright ban the guns. In both cases, though, as negative as it sounds, everything talking about the special session, what could come of it, what's being discussed in it, the news of guns being banned, in New Mexico, how negative and how doom and gloom that all sounds straight up. We have to look at the huge amounts of hope that we can now glean from, after the facts. So Tennessee, special session happened, nothing passed. No new gun control measures passed. That's a huge win. And whether that's because logic prevailed in the special session, which it didn't, train. All right, not too loud, actually. They must have blown the horn before the tracks. Whether that's because logic prevailed in the special session, which it didn't, we heard it. We heard the sound bites from TRX Arms, or it was just pure idiocy and uselessness of the system, which I stand to reason that's exactly why nothing came from it, because it seemed to me that the representatives that were speaking and that were present at the special session were using their time and using it as an opportunity simply to generate sound bites for themselves, for their campaigns, for fundraisers, whatever it was. And while that is incredibly, selfish, and I even say it's treasonous, honestly, given the subject at hand, given the stakes at hand on both sides for keeping people safe and for natural rights, you shouldn't be doing that. But also, at the end of the day, the result is no further infringements of gun rights. So that's great news that even a rather constitutionally questionable special session yielded zero negative results for us. I will take that, and it proved that they are fairly incapable of forcing down any unconstitutional or anti-natural rights legislation via a special session in Tennessee. That's a very big deal. So that precedent does not exist. That huge loss for the state and the gun control proponents, I will take as a huge W for me going forward. But also in New Mexico, where a health emergency was declared to prevent those carrying guns, let's just say that backfired, no pun intended, where you not only have private civilians, not only just sort of civilly disobeying, not complying, but openly flying in the face of the legislation by having open carry rallies in the cities and locations where, according to the emergency, the firearms would be explicitly banned. No one was arrested. And that's cool for two reasons. One, because you see civilians willing to be very outspoken when it comes to these sort of blatant infringements now, which I was questioning. Obviously it's going to be location dependent. You're not going to get this in every state. You're not going to get this in every city. But what happened in New Mexico gives me a great amount of hope, because the backlash was so great and it was so loud and it was so open And to have nobody arrested was great because you saw that many people showing they have a spine and they know what's right and they know what they have to do to sort of speak out. And at the same time, we saw law enforcement acknowledge that this is fucking stupid. We won't even comply. And that is just as big because I've spoken about this before, and you may have heard other people talk about this, but politicians aren't going to ever knock on your door and try to take your firearms. It'll never be the person you voted or didn't vote for. It's going to be the sheriff. It's going to be the local police. It's going to be the National Guard. It's going to be the hired guns. It's going to be the law enforcement of the state coming to take your rights away. So to have those individuals, those good men in those positions of power, whether you like it or not, they have power vested to them by the state via the monopoly on violence. With all of that considered, they said, you know what? Our pay very well, we may not be able to feed our families. Our pay depends on this. The house, the roof over our head may be taken away if we can't, get a paycheck here. We are not going to enforce this. Whether they did that verbally or non-verbally through not arresting anybody at the rallies is a huge, huge victory, I think. And that's a huge sign of hope for us in the community, I think. So take that as a huge win. Feel great about it, celebrate it, because I talk a lot of doom and gloom. All you hear is a lot of doom and gloom online and podcasts on Instagram, whatever it is. So celebrate that one. Pour yourself one, a small one. It's a small win, but it's still a great headline and huge. And I'm not done either, because not only did, private civilians, did law enforcement, sort of spit in the face of this emergency, but we had mass media and even the political machine on both sides flip the middle finger to this thing, which was awesome to hear. I think I saw a CNN news host like asking, whatever the fuck Lujan, whatever the fuck her name is, like, are you sure you can do that? Like, are you sure that's constitutional? And they kept pushing her whenever Lujan gave a shitty political answer, which usually gets accepted and just lauded by the left-leaning news media. They kept pushing her, they kept questioning her. And again, whether that is a sign of CNN trying to tap into another demographic to save their own ass, or whether they truly believe it, doesn't matter. It's a great sign because it sends the message to fuck off to any politician who's going to try the same sort of maneuver. Same with everything politically that everyone else was sort of piling it on Lujan there as well. Any negative thing against this, wherever it comes from, is good. That's my take, at least. It just can't be, pick and choosy whenever someone else tries this thing for political clout. And that's why I say maybe don't put all your eggs in the basket of the politicians who spat on Lujan after she did this. But you get where I'm going. Just every situation is going to be basically a little bit different. It may be a different emergency that's declared or a different justification to try to take away the weapons, but be very careful of who is saying what and who you side with and who you put your trust into. As someone who preaches decentralization and being self-sustaining, independent, I don't really put a whole lot of trust or loyalty into those of the state or the mass media. That's just me, though. Do whatever you want. I'm going to turn the lights here. It's getting a little dark. Please hold. And with that, I want to conclude on this last little thing. And I was about to make this a sort of like a monologue piece because I was playing with it for a while. But we see time and time again how racism, white supremacy, anti-vax, whatever you want to call it, are sort of labels that are thrown around to discredit somebody, to try to get them shoved off the stage or pushed off the soapbox of the public square immediately, to unperson them so that nobody listens to them because their ideology is so skewed, it's so invalid that anything they possibly say cannot be valid. I think some of that has to be deployed now at this point where we are heading and where we are at. But not to the same extreme because I think, and you'll see where I'm going with this, I think we got to start labeling people, or viewing people rather, still as humans. I'm not trying to unperson somebody, but we need to start revealing and labeling their actions accordingly. If they are against us and they have certain beliefs and are saying certain things. And that's going to sound very spicy, I understand on the surface, but I'm going to dive into it here. If someone came up to you and told you that they have inanimate objects in their house, or you have inanimate objects in your house that they believe are able to act on the world, to inflict harm and to hurt people completely on their own, without anyone or anything acting on them, you would think that person is schizophrenic. You would think that person is so mentally unstable that they need to be committed immediately. If they think like a guitar is going to jump off the wall here and crash over my head completely on its own, that's somebody who's going to need some help. Either that or they need a priest to come into their house. But that person is schizophrenic, and that logic is no different than believing that guns are the problem. That by banning guns, you are going to completely remove and alleviate America of the gun violence epidemic, the school shooting epidemic, whatever you want to call it. That's simply not the fact. And even for as dumb as Ms. Lujan is, she acknowledged it wasn't going to fix anything. It was simply about sending a message to the owners, and a political message at that as well. At the same time, actually, I do have to acknowledge this. I gave props to CNN for poking, back at Lujan when she was saying dumb shit. Mr. Hogg, who has been a constant pain in the side of the gun community, actually shared a very valid take in the face of the New Mexico health emergency, and actually was right. He said with us, he said that was bullshit. That's not how you go about it. Whether he means going about it a different way to achieve another, ends of total gun control, I don't know. But he piled on to the hatred for this. And I'm not saying he's not politically charged either. I know very well that he is. But credit where credit is due. He also said that's fucking dumb. But back to the topic at hand. Why is it that when a drunk driver strikes and kills another person, why is it that the car is not taken away and locked up in a lot or destroyed? And it might be just as a result of no one claiming it after the accident, but why is that not the only consequence for that action? Similarly, why isn't the alcohol company sued, taken to court? Why isn't alcohol banned altogether when these things happen, and happen so prevalently? I don't know the stats off my head, but I'd be curious to see what drunk driving and alcohol related injuries compare, and deaths compared to gun deaths. Non-self-inflicted gun injuries and gun deaths, while those are important, they're not relevant to this argument here. So why aren't those things? Why aren't the cars, the car manufacturers, the alcohol manufacturers, excuse me, why aren't they looked at? Why aren't they punished? Why aren't they crucified in the public square? Why is it that when an individual uses a weapon against another individual, the gun is indeed crucified in the public square? It is demonized. It is held up as this huge thing. And it's because it's political. There's no other reason for it other than it is completely a political angle by those in charge to stay in power, to garner votes, to promise yet another perfect outcome and fall short. But they will still continue to get votes for pushing the narrative and keeping things so charged with it. Think about it like this. When Obama went on his apology tour, I remember this very vividly because my parents watched Fox News so much. When Obama went on his apology tour and stopped at Japan to apologize when we nuked them, when they saw Oppenheimer in 3D, for real back in the day, why was it he who showed up and apologized in front of the prime minister or whoever it was in Japan? Why wasn't the actual airplane who carried the bombs? Why weren't the actual bombs there to apologize? And I know that sounds fucking silly, but that is exactly the same thing as pointing to the object that I'm looking at right now on my counter, which is my Glock, and saying, that kills people. That thing right there is going to shoot somebody completely on its own, and I do not even have to touch it. And if it does, then I won't go to jail, so get rid of the gun. That's the same logic that's being deployed by the people who are simply seeking to ban guns or take away or restrict access to said firearms as a means to peace, as a means to preventing any sort of shooting at all. That does not work. We have been over this time and time again. Anybody who has it in their brain that shooting another individual is the way, is a proper means to the end, already does not give a fuck about the rules. That does not stop them. So by saying that you cannot own a gun is not going to stop them from owning a gun. We see that in Chicago. We see that in New York. We see that in California. We see that in all these places where you cannot own a gun. Hell, you see it in college campuses, on all the schools. It's illegal to own a firearm and carry a firearm on the premises of that school. And I ask anybody who says we need gun control, I can stop at this. I can call you schizophrenic. I can run through all of those scenarios, all those examples, all I want. All I have to ask you is I'll do one better. You don't need to have any sort of, complex laws or bills or paperwork or applications or background checks. You can skip all of that. You can forego all of that and you can make it a completely less politically charged argument. Just make murdering somebody illegal. Why isn't that illegal yet? And then just watch them try to work that out in their fucking head, okay? Because they only have one way to go about this. They can only say, well, of course it's illegal. And from there, before they even go, yes, but, you can even say, that's the point. People kill people, and people will shoot people no matter what the law is. If they have already made that decision in their mind that that is a proper means to the end, the law will do fuck all to stop it. The only thing that law is a preventative measure. It is a deterrent that does not work. We have seen it does not work. But for the good men and women, the people like you and I, the people who live good lives, who follow the rules, even the bad ones at times, who are responsible gun owners, who are the right type of citizen, the right type of civilian who you'd want to carry a firearm, they will follow those rules. They do not want to pay the price for not, or they do not want to suffer the consequences of not following those rules because they live a clean life. They have a lot to lose. At the same time, those same individuals are the easiest targets for law enforcement and the system to target because they know they're not going to push back with violence because they do follow the rules. So the only thing the rules do are cripple the good people who are going to stop mass shooters, who are going to stop killers, who are going to stop absolute schizophrenics and mentally ill individuals from shooting up schools or other innocent people. So next time you find someone going down this rabbit hole, or maybe you find yourself going down this rabbit hole, though I don't think you're going to be listening to this if you are somebody crying for gun control, ask them or ask yourself, why haven't they made murder illegal yet? Why not? You can skip this whole gun control thing. Just make murder illegal. It's not that hard, right? Surely that's a pretty easy bill to pass. It's a pretty easy law to pass, you think, right? Oh, but yeah, sure, it is legal. Well, people still do it. Clearly, it's not. I haven't done that in the real world yet. I really want to. I want to see where that goes. And maybe that's a video idea. I'll just walk around with like one of my portable mics, just poking the bear with some people. That'd be pretty funny. Um, and then the same thing applies. I talked about schizophrenia, thinking that, inanimate objects are just going to commit murder, are going to act on their own without anyone touching them or acting on them, as if, the person wielding the tool isn't responsible. The tool itself is responsible. That's insane. That's schizophrenia. No, it's not insane. Insane, the point I'm about to make, is thinking that time and time again, the government, the state, is going to provide the outcome they promised, is going to keep you safe, is going to be everything that they said they would be, and more, maybe even in some cases, when time and time again that has never happened. Nothing they touch is great. Nothing they touch has ever really worked as they intended. If it works, it is because it has required many, many dollars and hours to get to a point that is functional. Look at the roads. I think now 43% of all roads in the country are not up to par or are in poor condition. I'll try to find that little news blurb lately. I'd be curious to see how much of my home state is responsible for that figure, because it is absolutely abysmal here. Look at anything the state owns and compare it to a private business. You will not find, and if you do, that company won't be in business for long. You'd be very hard pressed to find a private enterprise, a private company that is worse in any way, from clean bathrooms to better service to better quality products, than the state. And I hold that because there's no fucking incentive for the state to deliver on what they promise, to be as good as they say they will be for your vote. They have never done that. And if you are a history buff or have studied history at all, you will know that all the atrocities, all of the ignorant missteps that have cost the most in human capital have been committed by governments or have been sanctioned by governments. You'd be absolutely insane to think that I would trust the state to keep me safe. I will trust the state to keep my kids safe. Because back to my previous point, they haven't done that. Murder is illegal. Shooting people is illegal. Carrying guns on school property is illegal. And yet, look what's happening. You keep trusting the state to do the thing over and over and over again, and yet over and over and over again, we have seen them fail. Therefore, you are insane to believe that a different result, a different outcome will suddenly manifest itself, even though we are doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's going to take states like California, where we're seeing it, in Illinois as well, where their two large cities are now fucking just pits of despair, where people are just going to leave. The city will collapse on itself, it'll eat itself. That is not where I want it to go. That is not where it should go. But sometimes that is the last resort. Sometimes that is the wake up call that has to take place. That is the thing that has to happen for people to finally realize, oh, fuck, they don't represent us. Oh, fuck, they can't do what they said they're going to do. Oh, fuck, I am now paying the price for my ignorance and their arrogance. It's on them too. So insanity and schizophrenia, I'm going to say that's what we are up against the most when it comes to the community here, whether it be freedom, gun community, whatever you want to call it. That's it. We've been called domestic terrorists, white supremacists, murderers, whatever you want to call it, and that's absolutely insane. All of those ideologies, those tags, those labels fly exactly in the face of what we believe in, of what we're about, of natural rights that every human is born with, and make us all truly equal in the image of whatever God you believe in or whatever it may be. To believe in any of those ideologies, to be any of those things that they say we are, is simply, well, insane. So keep that in mind next time you go down this route. You are either dealing with an insane person, a schizophrenic person, or you're dealing with both. And then ask them, why isn't murder illegal yet? And then just keep driving that point home, and you'll see that it's really hard to talk to a wall. But I guess that was really, those are really the main points I was trying to get at here. I got a little spirally and spicy at the end there. But that made sense to me. I think as I've seen more interviews, as I've heard more terrible takes on, the topic, I've just kind of come to the conclusion that that's sort of what we're dealing with. And that's fine, I think, because I do see hope. Obviously, the hope that came out of the lack of any efficiency in the Tennessee special session, in the lack of any enforcement or support of the New Mexico order. And also, as tragic as the Hawaii fires were, as tragic as the last, I'll go back 4 years, what had happened here were those who didn't comply, those who went against law enforcement, those who went against the political machine, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the media, whatever it is, those who followed common sense, followed proper scientific theory, and who followed just the laws of natural rights, all ended up better and they're better off than those who complied. I'm going to use the Hawaii example, although now that may not be it because I know that YouTube is now censoring that and calling it a Chinese psyop. But I am not here to share my opinion on how the fire started. I am simply here to share that those who disobeyed the police, who found a way around them to get through the street that they were blocking on the way off the island to escape the fires, survived. I'm not saying that it is the fault of those who listened to law enforcement. As like I said with the rules, good men and women will follow the rules. But those who followed the state, those who listened to the law enforcement, those who did not disobey a bad law, who did not practice civil disobedience for their own natural rights and for their actual life in this case, perished. Their families perished. But those who said, no, fuck you, my life, my family's life is on the line here. And unless you are God, or unless you are whatever entity it is that grants me the natural rights that I am given simply by being a human being, you do not get to tell me I cannot go through this road. And those, ladies and gentlemen, those are the exact type of civilians that we need. And they are better off now. They're either alive or they're healthier, depending on which scenario you want to look at here. So keep that in mind. Whenever anything like this comes up again, no matter how dark, no matter how negative it may seem, no matter how heavy that boulder is or how steep that hill is, we got to push it up. That's just our battle. That's part of our purpose in this life. But by pushing that boulder, by carrying on, by doing exactly what we've been doing, we're going to be better off. We're going to be happier. We're going to be healthier for it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll talk to you guys next week. Until then, stay metal.